Before cars became the technological marvels they are today, the automobile industry pioneered some ridiculously bizarre innovations, many of which didn't stand the test of time. Now, it wasn't like all these vehicle innovations were bad, per se, but the cost of production of cars equipped with some of these technologies was simply too high. So, in this video, we will talk about some of the brilliant ideas engineers in the automobile industry have come up with that never really took off. Kicking off the list is the Shatterproof pop-out windshield of the Tucker 48 sedan. Technological advancements have given rise to several incredibly useful car innovations dedicated to protecting drivers and passengers alike. However, before we got autonomous safety features like adaptive cruise control, automatic emergency braking, and lane assist, among others, we had stuff like a pop-out windshield to protect drivers and passengers during an accident. So, long story short, in the 1940s, Preston Tucker was a massive advocate for manufacturing cars that were safe to drive, even at high speed, instead of using the safety feature as a marketing gimmick. By 1948, we got the Tucker 48, which featured a shatterproof glass windshield with a mechanism to pop out in case of collision alongside an extra padded car interior. The mechanism prevented people from hitting the windscreen in case of collision. The car never received seatbelts because the company claimed it would mean a lack of belief in how safe the car was. Only 51 units were ever released, and it's curious to see we don't have cars with detachable windscreen as a safety feature in today's market, especially considering how rugged the Tucker was. Up next, automatic seatbelts. When automatic seatbelts were announced in the 80s, they seemed like the next best thing to happen in the automobile industry. The design of the seatbelts ensures you are always protected when you get behind the steering wheel to drive. The first commercial car to introduce automatic seatbelts to the market was the 1975 Volkswagen Golf. By 1977, the United States Secretary of Transportation had even mandated every new car released in the US. Market must either have airbags or automatic seatbelts. The cost of producing cars with these types of seatbelts was so cheap many automakers, including General Motors, opted to use automatic seatbelts instead of the more expensive airbags. So why did they go extinct? Well, it turned out that airbags were simply a more effective protective measure compared to automatic seatbelts. So, the rules were changed, and well, here we are. Moving on, fifth wheel parking concept. Parallel parking remains one of the most difficult things you can ask a driver to do. For the most part, there's usually not enough space to make parallel parking easy. Now, we have parking and rear cameras, collision sensors, and other features that help drivers park their cars safely. Back in the day, though, engineers in the automotive world had to come up with brilliant ideas using the technology available at the time to solve the problem of parallel parking. In 1951, Cadillac introduced a car that featured a retractable fifth-wheel mechanism. The wheel is located under the car's trunk, and when activated, it is lowered to give drivers more control while maneuvering the rear end of their car into a parking space. Despite the genius behind the idea, turned out it was simply too chunky to deploy and retract the wheel. There were also times when the wheel would glitch, which ended up throwing off the driver's coordination instead of improving it. The fifth wheel was quickly scrapped, and drivers instead opted to drive around to find suitable and comfortable spots to park their cars instead of trying to parallel park in tight spaces. In the fifth spot, we have the Bose Suspension. Suspension systems are integral parts of a car. Every automaker spends considerable time to determine the perfect suspension option to integrate into a new car. The Bose suspension in the Lexus LS400 was an impressive innovation at the time. In fact, compared to some of the innovations in this video, it was largely considered a success. The Bose suspension was created to keep any car level regardless of how irregular the road surface is. This means no body rolls even when hard braking or racing over bumps. What's even more impressive was that the Bose suspension could jump, giving drivers the feeling of flying over rough terrain. Unfortunately, the suspension system was discontinued because the technology was difficult and expensive to produce and install. Up next, the curb feeler. One of the most iconic and innovative car accessories created in the 1950s was curb feelers. The feelers were quite brilliant devices, really. They are attached to the sides of cars and are designed to prevent cars from scraping against the curbs while parking. Since they were made using flexible spring metal rods, anytime the wheels of a car are close to ruining a curb, the small spring metal rods would bend or retract as soon as they make contact with the curb, resulting in audible sound signals. At this point, the driver would stop to prevent any damage to the curb. In the third spot, we have the onboard record players. The evolution of listening to music in cars is a very fascinating topic. Nowadays, people stream any song they want to listen to while in their vehicle without any stress. Back in the day, 8-track tapes, cassettes, CDs, and MP3 players reigned supreme. But before they also became a thing, phonographs and record players were the only way people could listen to music. So, not surprisingly, engineers at the time figured out a way for people to listen to their favorite music by playing their vinyl 45s on a pre-installed car record player. These record players, known as in-car phonographs, were quite popular in the 1950s, however. There were many issues with them. For instance, you could not turn over the record to listen to the second part of a track while driving. Also, the phonograph needle tended to lift whenever the car hit a bump or rough terrain, which reduced the quality of the listening experience. Chrysler was a massive advocate for this innovation, but sadly, it never took off the way the company wanted. Holding down the second spot, we have the Woody Wagon. Unique and bold car designs are typically considered the hallmark of the 40s and 50s era in the automobile world. Of the many absurd designs in that era, Woody Wagons were considered novel and stylish at the time. The first cars made with wood accents were first released in the late 1920s. At the time, steel and metalworking techniques were just gaining traction, and shiny wood still delivered the look of prestige and charm that many car buyers wanted. So, for over 30 years, most cars in the American market had a woody material variant of some sort. However, wood body paneling was costly to make since the panels required extensive manual labor to produce. Then, there's the issue of polishing and maintaining the panels to maintain their quality and charm. Buick's 1953 Roadmaster was the last car to feature a Woody Wagon design before the market completely phased them out. In recent years, we have seen some automakers dabble with having some faux wood parts in their cars with little or no success. And finally, the foot-mounted headlight dimmer switch. For many decades, foot-mounted headlight dimmer switches were a thing. The switch was typically placed below the clutch and brake pedal, making it easy for people to drive at night with their left foot, keeping the light on while they operate, and steer the car with their right leg and hands. Fast forward to the 1970s, and automakers from Japan and across Europe started integrating electric wiring and functions into the dashboard of their cars to simplify the driving process. The industry was also at the point where manual transmissions were no longer in vogue and automatic transmission setups were gaining popularity. And because it was easier to drive a car with electrical switches, to turn on the headlamp dimmer or the windshield wiper, for example, a lot of Americans opted to purchase foreign cars. This quickly led to more and more automakers opting against integrating the foot-mounted headlight dimmer switch in their new cars. And there you have it. What other feature did you experience while using one of the classic cars that never made it past its era? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to drop a like on the video if you haven't already.